And many of you, we'll go back to budget here, many of you pledged in the campaign and through the last few months to fundamentally change the way business is done in Pierre in terms of the structural budget problems. And if you could each give some specifics as to your strategies, and especially looking ahead to the possible $100 million hole we've heard so much about in the 2012 budget.
There is more money in state reserves today than when Governor Rollins took office. It benefits for political purposes the notion that South Dakota is in budget trouble. In fact, we have the fourth lowest budget deficit in the nation, measured by the Pew Center in the states at 2.9%. There's 12 states with 20% budgets, 4 states with 30% deficits, and 3 states with 40% deficits. It's just in some person's interest to claim that South Dakota is out of control. We are not broken. We are not out of control.
Facts are stubborn things, and there are plenty of facts. One fact is we did pass a budget that I voted against that spends $32.5 million more next year than we spent this year. We can find a lot of excuses why we did that, and we can justify it 100 different ways. But a fact is that when many leaders were saying they were proposing $52 million in budget cuts, the fact is that those disappeared into thin air when we got down to the dark of night when we had to make a decision. We put off passing a budget when we should have responsibly done it because we heard from Washington, D.C. that there was a prospect of more bailout funds. We should have passed a budget that drew a line in the sand and said we won't spend more money next year than we spend this year. Instead, the leadership decided we should wait until the last moment of the last day to pass a budget. And then when we did, our state government spends over $4 billion a year. That's like over $11 million a day to run this state government. And we would dare to sit here in front of you people and say there's no place we can find money? $4 billion is still a lot of money in South Dakota. And just because we're demanding fiscal accountability and responsibility doesn't mean we would starve little children and kill old people.
Well, I talked a little bit about already in setting the price of government, which is going to be very key. And I recommended last fall when the governor was working on his budget with the staff to roll back to 2005 actual numbers, which is just about $1 billion. And that's about what our structural deficit is. And that's what you need to budget from, is an actual real number. Now, there's been talk about the reserves, and exactly right. We have about $2 million more in reserves today than we had in 2003. How much should it have been? It should have been well over $200 million in that account because it's been spent. $100 million was spent. Matter of fact, if we would have used the same policies we used in Brookings as mayor and as council, there'd be between $300 to $400 million in reserves on the state level by the policies that I shared with you that I will use as your next governor. So the point is that we have to bring accountability into government. We did that from a standpoint of bringing benchmarking and performance measuring into government. We measure very little on the state level, and we have to bring that on a per department basis, and we have to bring innovation into how government is carried out. Now, there's no question that we need new strategies, because you can't solve a problem by doing the same thing over and over again. It just isn't proving to be fruitful.
I hope you listened carefully to my friend Dennis Daugaard, because what he told you is that he will continue the current practices of this administration. He defends the current practices of this administration, even though in 7 of the last 8 years we've had structural deficits. One assumes that that practice will continue. That is, simply put, we are spending more money than we are taking in.